She said, "My college soulmate's in town. I'm staying at his hotel just to see if the spark's still there." I smiled. Follow your heart. The next morning, I delivered divorce papers to room 114. Her spark died instantly. Looking back, I realized some people mistake comfort for complacency. But I was just being myself. My name is Ethan, 38, and I work as a renewable energy consultant, analyzing wind patterns and solar efficiency for corporations across California. My wife, Claire, 36, had built a thriving career as a digital marketing strategist here in San Francisco. We met at a weekend farmers market in Oakland one bright October morning, both reaching for the same jar of local wildflower honey. I was drawn to her genuine laughter and the way she asked thoughtful questions about sustainable farming practices. She later told me she loved that I could explain wind turbine aerodynamics over a cold brew without sounding condescending. That day sparked a connection that felt effortless, grounding, and rare. We spent the next 3 years building a life together filled with shared routines and small adventures, weekend camping trips along the Sierra Nevada, cooking classes on lazy Saturday mornings, and quiet Sundays reading different sections of the newspaper. Then comparing notes over brunch. When Claire was promoted to senior strategist, I didn't hesitate to relocate from my beloved Northern California coast, taking a remote consulting role to support her ambitions. It felt natural to prioritize her dreams alongside mine. Yet, over the last 18 months, something fundamental shifted. Claire began guarding her phone as though it contained state secrets, placing it face down during dinner and stepping onto the balcony for calls. That once happened openly in the living room. College memories started surfacing constantly: late-night dorm anecdotes, campus traditions, spontaneous road trips with friends I'd never met. "Remember how carefree I used to be?" she'd ask wistfully, as if lamenting a version of herself I couldn't compete with. Her work schedule grew erratic, too, despite her well-established client portfolio, leaving her absent during nights we'd once spent together. I trusted her, perhaps too completely, attributing these changes to the pressures of her career. I suggested weekend getaways to our favorite bed and breakfast in Napa, or spontaneous date nights at the wine bar where we'd first truly connected. She brushed them off, claiming they felt forced, like trying to artificially recapture a spark that had naturally faded. Meanwhile, I continued our traditions: early morning jogs along Qley Field, carefully prepared meals using ingredients from the market where we met, and regular explorations of local artisans' shops. I never realized that my consistency, the very thing I thought anchored our love, had begun to feel predictable, mundane, and stifling in her eyes. The revelation came one Tuesday evening. I had prepared Claire's favorite salmon with roasted vegetables, uncorked a bottle of that Chardonnay she always loved, and was describing an interesting wind farm project in Central California. She set down her fork, her expression unreadable. "Ethan, I need to tell you something important," she began, voice tinged with excitement and nervous energy that immediately raised alarm bells in my mind. "Connor is coming to San Francisco this weekend for a tech conference," she continued, her eyes sparkling in a way that made my stomach twist. "And I think I need to spend the night with him." The words hung between us like jagged glass. I repeated them slowly, trying to ensure I'd understood correctly. "Spend the night with him?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "To see if the spark is still there," she clarified, as though this made everything perfectly reasonable. "Connor," she explained, "was her college soulmate, the one she claimed she'd never stop thinking about." Her casual delivery, almost conversational in tone, hit me harder than any shouting match could. She justified it, insisting it wasn't cheating because she was being honest. "Sneaking around would be worse," she said. And then, almost mockingly, she reached for my hand in a gesture that felt more patronizing than intimate. "Follow your heart," she smiled, as if her plan was a simple truth rather than the emotional earthquake it represented. I kept my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. "If you think Connor might be your soulmate, then explore that," I said, already envisioning the call to my attorney friend who'd prepared the paperwork late into the night, watching her pack her overnight bag as though this were an ordinary business trip. I felt a mixture of sadness and clarity. The life we'd built, grounded, thoughtful, and shared was something she no longer valued. And for the first time, I realized that being myself, consistent and loyal, was exactly what she had mistaken for predictability and boredom. Saturday morning arrived with a cold, crisp clarity. I drove to the Grand Central Hotel, divorce papers tucked firmly in my briefcase, accompanied by a professional process server named Linda, who had handled hundreds of delicate situations like this one. My attorney had worked through the night to ensure every document was precise, legally unassailable. A private investigator, Paul Martinez, had also provided preliminary findings on counter-evidence that would make even the most confident con artist hesitate. The hotel lobby buzzed with early conference attendees checking schedules, sipping coffee, and scrolling on their phones, the perfect cover for what I was about to do. From across the room, I spotted Claire and Connor seated at a corner table near the hotel restaurant entrance, leaning toward each other with the kind of intensity that only months of fantasized reunion could create. Connor, tall and impeccably dressed, projected confidence that seemed rehearsed rather than natural, while Claire's eyes shone with excitement. Completely unaware of the storm approaching, Linda approached them with calm precision. "You are being served with divorce papers," she announced, her voice firm yet professional. The impact was immediate. Claire's eyes widened, her coffee cup trembling in her hands, while Connor froze, his confidence evaporating instantly. I walked toward the table, maintaining the composed demeanor I had cultivated over years of engineering precise analysis. "What are you doing here?" Claire managed to whisper, scanning the room with panic. Connor's voice faltered. "Look, man, this isn't what it looks like." I held up my phone, displaying Paul's report. The documents detailed credit card charges across multiple cities, social media evidence of orchestrated reconnections, and phone records revealing a pattern of seduction aimed at vulnerable women like Claire. Connor's smugness dissolved into terror. "You're married." Claire's voice cracked as she stared at him in dawning horror. "Actually," I interjected calmly, savoring the precision of timing, "our investigator has revealed that your wife Sarah thinks you are at a legitimate conference and has no idea you've been romantically pursuing Claire." Connor's face went pale, his hands fidgeting as he tried to craft an explanation that would never come. Claire, stunned into silence, turned to me, confusion and betrayal mixing in her gaze. "He told me he was divorced," she whispered, voice trembling. "He said he'd learned to appreciate real love after a bad breakup." The irony was perfect. At that exact moment, Connor's phone rang. He glanced at it, saw the name Sarah, and stepped away, trying to mask his panic with forced cheerfulness. The lobby was quiet enough for Claire and me to hear every word. Sarah's voice was warm, loving, and entirely unaware of Connor's duplicity. She updated him about their children's activities, casually expressing pride in his professional work. Connor stammered through responses, a man caught completely off guard by reality. Claire's expression hardened. The facade she had built in her mind, imagining Connor as the solution to her discontent, crumbled. "That didn't sound like a marriage that had ended years ago," she said, deadly calm. "It sounded like a woman who adores you and has no idea you've been lying to me." Connor attempted weak justifications, but I watched as each excuse fell apart. His charm, rehearsed over months of digital manipulation, could not withstand the weight of truth. Claire finally turned to him, cutting off his protestations with a single gesture that communicated authority and finality. "No, I understand perfectly," she said. "You've been using me. All those promises, all those romantic messages, they were just lines you've probably delivered to dozens of women." Connor's final desperate attempts to assert that what we had was special failed. A text from Sarah regarding dinner receipts arrived, and he bolted toward the elevator, muttering about needing to catch an earlier flight. He didn't even acknowledge Claire as he disappeared, leaving her standing with her overnight bag and a mixture of disbelief and devastation etched on her face. I observed silently, heart steady, emotions channeled into precise observation. "You believed what you wanted to believe," I said gently, more empathetic than vengeful. Claire whispered, "I'm such an idiot," the weight of her misjudgment pressing down on her. Months later, Claire attempted a frantic reconciliation campaign. Voicemails became increasingly desperate, emails longer, tearful, and imploring. She arrived at my new apartment, homemade food in hand, wearing the dress from our first anniversary. "I made your favorite," she said, her voice a mixture of hope and desperation. As if that gesture could undo the months of betrayal. I was calm, unyielding. "Claire, I appreciate the gesture, but we're getting divorced. There's nothing to discuss." Her protests, her insistence that she loved me now, fell on ears that had already heard the truth and decided it was irreversible. I had started seeing someone new, Rachel, a brilliant environmental attorney with a shared passion for sustainable energy and outdoor adventures, everything Claire had been unable to appreciate in me, even when confronted. I remained firm. "This is someone who actually wants to be with me," I said. Claire, increasingly frantic, accused me of being unreasonable, of refusing counseling, of abandoning our shared history. I simply replied, quietly, firmly, "It meant everything to me. That's why I can't forgive what you did. You didn't just cheat, you asked for permission to explore someone else while still married. That's beyond forgiveness," her mother called, attempting to mediate. But I remained even and resolute. 6 months later, Claire's life had unraveled. Freelance clients abandoned her, her professional reputation suffered, and she was forced into part-time retail work, isolated from her former social circle. Meanwhile, I had moved forward, building a life of integrity, growth, and shared joy with someone who truly valued partnership and consistency over fleeting excitement. 6 months after the hotel confrontation, life had settled into a rhythm I never could have imagined during those turbulent days. Rachel and I had found our own Saturday morning routine, strolling through the same Oakland farmers market where Claire and I had met years ago. We lingered at the stalls, selecting heirloom tomatoes, local honey, and fresh herbs. Our conversations filled with laughter, plans, and shared excitement about small domestic projects that felt meaningful in a way that nothing in my marriage ever had. It was there, among the familiar scents and colorful displays, that I first noticed Claire. She lingered at a distance, thinner than I remembered, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, signs of sleepless nights and stress. She approached cautiously, hesitating like a deer caught in a clearing. "Ethan," she called softly, her voice barely carrying over the bustling market. "Could we talk for a few minutes? There are things I need to tell you." Rachel looked up with curiosity but no trace of jealousy. I explained briefly who Claire was and that this was the kind of conversation she needed to have with me alone. Rachel smiled warmly, nodding, and wandered toward a nearby lavender stand. Claire came closer, words tumbling out in a rush, almost rehearsed. She told me about the collapse of her professional life, how her freelance marketing contracts had vanished after news of her affair circulated, how she had been forced into part-time retail work, and how her social circle had largely abandoned her. Her life, once structured and ambitious, had deteriorated in ways I could only observe with quiet sadness. "I look at you and Rachel," she said, nodding toward the figure at the lavender stand, "and I see everything I threw away. I see exactly what I had and how I convinced myself it was boring because it was stable." Her voice cracked slightly, a fragile admission of regret. "I threw away the best relationship I ever had, chasing a fantasy, thinking it would make me feel alive." I listened, steady, absorbing every word without judgment. "I hope you understand," I said quietly, "that life doesn't give do-overs. What you had with me was real, meaningful, and it was destroyed by choices you made." She nodded, the tears she tried to contain finally spilling. "I know," she whispered. "I was selfish and blind. I finally understand what I lost, and it's devastating. I just needed to tell you that I was wrong." It was the most honest she had been since the unraveling began, and while I felt a flicker of empathy, I also knew that forgiveness did not mean resumption. My life had moved forward, built carefully with someone who valued partnership over transient excitement. "I hope Rachel knows how lucky she is," I said, letting the words float between us like a benediction. "And I hope you find clarity in your own path, because the life you destroyed with your choices is not mine to repair." Claire left the market without argument, and Rachel returned with a bright smile, hands full of herbs and fresh produce. "Everything okay?" she asked. I nodded, feeling an internal calm I hadn't felt in months. "Better than okay," I said, taking her hand and savoring the steady, grounding presence beside me. Life with Rachel blossomed naturally. We finalized plans for an engagement trip through several national parks, mapping sunrise spots for a proposal over the Grand Canyon. Our weekends were filled with meticulous, joyful planning for adventures, conversations about trails, camping gear, and environmental projects that merged our passions. Each moment, however ordinary, carried depth, intention, and shared meaning. One crisp morning, I ran my usual loop through Qley Field. The path that had once carried me through sorrow and reflection. Now, it carried me with a sense of purpose, exhilaration, and gratitude for the life I was building. A simple text from Rachel awaited me as I returned. Can't wait to finalize our park reservations tonight. Love you. Simple, direct, no drama, no hidden motives, just partnership, trust, and shared excitement for the life we were intentionally creating together. And I realized something profound. The life I thought was predictable, the one Claire had dismissed, was exactly the life that mattered. Stability, love, and shared growth were not boring. They were the foundation for a joy that no fantasy or fleeting spark could ever replace. As the sun rose over the bay, reflecting off the water, I understood that some relationships were lessons, some were missteps, but the right partnership, one built on respect, shared values, and mutual investment, was what created real fulfillment. Everything Claire had lost, I had gained, and in that gain, I found peace.